And we're live! Hello everyone, and welcome back to the dungeon. I'm your dungeon master and host, Vibe. So, today we are back for some more morning dungeons. Feels like it's been a little while since we've done one of these, D&D story times. Today, I'm going to be, telling you a little more about the campaign I've been running most recently for, my group. The homebrewed campaign I've been running by the name of Heroes of the Frontier. Just for a reminder for you, when we last left off, our three characters, Ragnar, Rob, and Sitterquin, had just returned to the city of New Hope after the very first meeting with the entirety of the Witch's Hand. Upon arriving at the city gates, they found the city is now being attacked by this massive Hydra. In game terms, it is of gargantuan size. So I'll just kind of hop right into it because, this first session had honestly a lot of cover. Anytime they enter the city after some big quest, they do a lot because they basically hit up all the NPCs to kind of go over what's happened and try to restock on supplies and such, which is kind of good. I kind of like that. Is they develop this kind of style because it really leaves a lot of room to talk to just all sorts of characters and get into all sorts of shenanigans. But yeah, honestly, a lot of some really fun stuff I put together for them will be kind of covered in this video here. So let's get started. So, Bodhi reaches the gates and finds that it's being attacked by this large Hydra. For reference, this was what would be called an Iron-Scaled Hydra, a special, objectively much cooler version of the Hydra that was introduced in the Mythic Odysseys of Pharaohs book. You'll actually see a few more creatures from this book later on in this, though the party has yet to actually encounter any more of them, other than they have encountered actually another one of these Hydras. I'm using a lot of Hydras so far in this campaign. I kind of set them up as sort of the, in this first sort of section, the sort of big dangerous random encounter, because I like Hydras, but I should really try to mix it up a bit. In any case, so they get to the gate, and I have to admit, this was definitely one of those times where the DM found a cool monster and just really wanted to use it and didn't really think about what level the party was. I can't remember what they were at this point in time. I want to say they were level probably 4 or 5, because now they are level 6, and this was a couple sessions back. Actually a good couple sessions back. We're on our 11th session at this point. Woo, go us. Anyways. But I do think I handled pretty well. So basically, to kind of help balance it out, on the walls were manned by, of course, by guards of the city who were manning ballistas, as well as two kind of stronger NPCs. One of them being character they met already, the Samurai Rohan, who is the personal guard of the Prince of Orthir, and then a knight that they had yet to meet, but were about to meet for the first time. So they have a pretty tense fight with this Hydra. At one point, the entire party being knocked unconscious, but luckily, the knight character, who they were about to be introduced to as Yirsa, did have access to healing word and was able to save characters from near death. So after they managed to defeat the Hydra through a very intense use of various types of fire, they decided to cut it open to see what was inside, because also admittedly, based on the description of the Hydras being these very ravenous creatures, I kind of picture them kind of like the fancy version of tiger sharks, where cut them open and you just find all sorts of crazy shit in the stomach. And so I basically kind of turn them into little goodie bags, where if you kill one of those things and you cut it open, there's a pretty good chance to find some neat stuff. And since it was a particularly tough fight, I loaded it up with 3 homebrewed magic items. Those 3 items of which are now each being used by one of the party members. They're not super up there. One of them is basically just a more flavor texted armor resistance to acid. And then I gave one of them a halberd that does extra poison resistance and ignores poison resistance, but not poison immunity. Deals extra... My bad, not poison. Acid. It deals extra acid damage and ignores poison. I keep saying poison. Acid resistance. Poison and acid are different things. They both burn, but for different reasons. And then the last one was a spell book that contained a variety of acidic spells, as well as gave you the ability to actually instead cast such spells on yourself. If you pass the spell DC, you heal yourself for the damage you would have taken. They haven't used that feature too many times yet because it's a bit volatile. So with that defeated, they were able to enter the city. So as they rested from the wounds from the Hydra fight, they are approached by Rohan, and he invites them to meet with the prince, who is eager to thank the party for all that they've done. Before this, however, they returned to the guild hall and told them basically everything they learned about the Witch's Hand. Those they met, what their plans are, the whole thing. But they decided to keep the relation to the young fortune teller Dash to themselves, so concerned as to how people might react to that. Why am I so jittery today? My head looks all jittery. Might be because I'm reading, so it's like trying to track my eyes while I'm reading. I don't know. Reading my campaign notes. I have notes for this one because it's the campaign I'm currently running. Anyways. So yeah, but they decided to keep that information themselves, and as they don't know anything of this character or the people they've just told about, they had no reason to doubt them. So the guildmaster, as they did, their guild advisor, Celine, got them in contact with the actual guild master himself. This being their first time meeting the man, an elf mage by the name of Adwick. So after hearing them, he decided to speak with the party himself, and after hearing about the danger of the Witch's Hand, decided to try to arrange a meeting with the prince and princess to discuss what should be done about the group. Which gives the party plenty of time to run about the city and find some more things to do. So as they wait for the meeting, they go and speak with Raven and Crow, the quote-unquote caretakers of Dash. Ragnar asserts that he plans to take Dash away from the city to hide her from the Witch's Hand. Which was honestly a decision that had me as the DM a bit nervous, as it sounded like they had every intention of taking this go and basically running away from the campaign. Which I can handle. I feel like I can handle that. I feel like I'm good enough at working on the fly that I would be able to, A, get them back to the sort of main campaign area, or B, just come up with some new dangers to come after them. Because obviously these people aren't going to stop. They require the rings that is held by each of the witch's children, one of which is carried, of course, by Dash. However, Raven and Crow just kind of mock him, as that is what they do, and state that Dash will never agree to leave. And even Ragnar, being the good guy he is, agrees that he would, of course, not take her away by force, but will ask her. Afterwards, Citoquin approaches to Raven and Crow and speaks to them in private about her own plight in regards to the bargain she had made with both Pippin as well as the counteroffer presented by Feist of the Witch's Hand. If you don't recall, these two groups are both after these stone tablets located in these ancient tombs out on the frontier, with Pippin being a pretty high up the leader of Gyjut, sort of a broken off city-state from Orthia. Currently having in possession Citoquin's old partner in crime back in her spying days, and have agreed to return her to her in exchange for these tablets. And then, of course, Feist, for unknown reasons, just wants to get in the way of Pippin's plans, and so presented the counteroffer of delivering the tablets to her, at which point she would give them a counterfeit to substitute the one she'd be returning to Pippin. Citoquin, not trusting any of these people, decided to go speak with Raven and Crow to see if they can't try to get, their own leverage in the situation. So you speak with Raven and Crow about the offer she was presented, and she asked them if they would be interested in taking the tablets and to provide her some suitable copies of them to trick her forced employers. Raven and Crow, being the individuals they are rather intrigued by this plan, and so they agree. So now, if you're keeping track, there are now 3 layers of deception within this plan. So we got Pippin, who she is going to present a fake counterfeit that she will obtain from Feist, who she's going to give another fake counterfeit to, give to her by Raven and Crow, who she's going to be given the real tablets to, without So, yeah, situation's getting a bit complex, and they've actually only recently started to really get into that. But we'll get to that later. So, after this meeting, the party returns to the local tavern, where they find Dash giving out some fortune readings. Ragnar tries to ask and convince her to leave the city, but as he wishes not to reveal the danger that she's under, she refuses, not seeing any issue in staying in the city, and Ragnar chooses to not force the issue for the time being. Which I have to admit, he kind of gave up on that point a little easier than I thought, but that's all good, because honestly, it makes things a little easier. So as they rest in the bar before the meeting with the prince, the bard they hired to work at the bar, Kira, approaches and inquires about the knight who helped them battle the Hydra, Yirsa. So he reveals that he has taken quite a liking with her, and asks if the party should ever take a mission with her to bring him along so he might try to get closer to her. The party, interested in the young bard's plight, agreed to the plan, which will come as kind of a final subplot a bit later on. So then, the party is escorted to meet with Prince Sorikoyo, who they quickly discover is a rather quiet, kind, but awkward young man who seems to rely quite heavily on his advisor, a gruff man by the name of Jitsuna Dachi. They are thanked profusely by the prince and given the reward, but are rather quickly escorted out by Jitsuna, who, though is grateful, as well, is also eager to see to that the prince attends to more, quote-unquote, more important matters. So the party already has mixed feelings about Jitsuna as well as the prince. So the party then heads to the meeting with Adwick and the prince and princess. So Adwick is intent on keeping the matter of dealing with the witch's hand a matter for the guild, as its guild and its adventurers to handle, but Jitsuna insists that it should be handled by the military. The plan is not welcome, however, as they wish not to lead people to think that they intend to start another war, which is just what the witch's hand means to do. Towards this end, they make a compromise. The party, now officially known as the Huntsman, is tasked with traveling with an adventurer appointed by the prince and princess to establish a way station on the frontier to make the exploration of the Fields of Judgment easier and safer. If they succeed, then the witch's hand will be deemed a matter for the guild to handle, but should they fail, the military will be mobilized. With that, the party begins to make the preparations, but not before making a trip to the local brothel known as the Grand Palace, the owner of which is the mysterious woman Weiss, who Citiquin made the deal with. She gives them the VIP treatment, and she gives them VIP treatment, and the party goes and honestly has themselves a good time. They enjoy night pleasure with Citiquin spending the evening with Weiss herself, who seems to express some interest in getting to know more about Citiquin as they conclude their business. Citiquin, of course, suspects Weiss's motives, working for an evil group of war cultists, as well as the fact that after spending the evening with her, she finds herself oddly lethargic, and presumes that this is some sort of power that she has. So the next few days are spent preparing before the Huntsmen, now accompanied by Yirsa and Kira, set out for their next expedition. So that was the end of that session. So come the next session, the party set out onto the frontier to begin their mission. As they travel, the Huntsmen help Kira come up with song lyrics to try and impress Yirsa. They have a very easy trip, having gotten the hang of traveling the frontier. They do, however, run into trouble, as Kira sets off a trap that ensnares him in a magic bubble that constantly emits a loud alarm. The alarm attracts a group of hobgoblins, but the party defeats them. They are unable to dispel the trap, so they dig the bubble up out of the ground and split the party up, with Yirsa and Finadir staying with Kira, while the party moves on to the fort. If you don't recall, because I haven't mentioned him for a little bit, Finadir is the party's NPC party member, who we designed using the new sidekick system in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which so far is working out pretty well. He's just kind of a fun little guide to have along, help kind of point out little things here and there. Not really a DMPC by any means, or at least I wouldn't say so. More just like, I mean, I guess you might call him that. He's more like just so like a help full body. Like, he does what they say he should do in combat, and if there's like some more hint or something, he's usually the foil I use to present it. But all in all, he just kind of goes off and does his own thing when they're in town, which is why he didn't really, I haven't mentioned him much yet so far in today's episode. Anywho, so after they split up, that night, Citiquin spots a group of dryads traveling through the night in a daze. She opts not to follow them, not wanting to leave the party behind, and the next morning they investigate the location that they saw them heading to, where they find the eviscerated bodies of the dryads in a large circle of dead grass. The party are unable to figure out what happened and continue on their way. This might be something to come up later. The party are, so during the day's travel, they become lost terribly and end up arriving at the fort after Finadier's group, discovering that the bubble did in fact dispel its own after some time. So as they watch the fort, they see the lieutenant of the Littlefinger exit the fort with a group of hobgoblins in tow, leaving only the unruly goblins guarding the fort. The party sneaks in with Ragnar and Citiquin using magic to disguise themselves as hobgoblins, with Rob acting as prisoner, a ploy that has worked for them a couple times already. They make their way inside and creep their way down into the dugout interior of the fort. Inside, they trip an alarm that sends goblins charging down the tunnel after them, in this very narrow tunnel that Citiquin has perfect sightline of. So she then sends a fireball down said tunnel and manages to kill pretty much the entire outer defense of the fort itself, as all the goblins just came pouring down the tunnel, Goblin Slayer style, and were just immediately eviscerated by a single fireball. Incinerated would be the proper word, I suppose. So yeah. So within a cavern, they find the goblin's boss, accompanied by a cadaver collector, which the boss immediately sets upon the party. The party, not wanting to fight such a beast inside this narrow tunnel, retreat back up and out of the tunnel, where the rest of the party is battering the remaining goblin defenders. They manage to kill those goblins rather quickly and begin to set up an ambush for the pursuing cadaver collector. Within the fort, there are various casks of air that were spread about, that they are able to use as bombs to decimate the cadaver collector with an explosion. If you haven't noticed, something I like to do is I do like to use some of the stronger monsters, even when I shouldn't be, because I don't know, they're cool. They tend to be kind of cool, and I like them. So to counter that, I like to kind of spread out little things in the environment to help them out. The Hydra, it was the extra NPCs and the ballistas. And for this cadaver collector, it was, once again, a few extra bodies and with the NPCs with them, as well as these casks of air that they could use for some extra explosive damage. So the bomb manages to damage it quite a bit, and together with the combined might of the party, they defeat the cadaver collector and the goblins, capturing the fort. So that's into that session, and then we begin the next. So the party explores the fort, and in their search discover that the fort's well has caved in, and within the hole is the fort's dungeon, where an old man and his wife are held. Rob attempts to help them, but suffers migraines as he attempts. Ragnar swaps out with him, and suspicious of the couple, takes his chances and attacks, and in doing so discovers the couple is actually an Oblox. If you don't know, this is one of my favorite oozes in the game, introduced in, I think, Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, if I recall correctly. It's either Mordenkainen's or Foes Guide. I want to say it's Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, though. So basically, it is an ooze that is able to create replicas of people it's eaten, even copying their memories and voices. As a result, it also does quite a bit of psychic damage within proximity of people. So it is a very interesting creature and very cool. So after discovering it's an Oblox, the whole party gets involved, and they manage to defeat it without too much issue. Doing so, they kind of more or less accidentally complete a side objective and further secure the fort's safety. Fearing that things are about as secure as they're going to get, they decide to head on back to the city. So as they travel back, Siquin speaks with Yusa, who they've noticed during their travels has quite a bit of trouble sleeping, a bit of a restless sleeper, tumbles around a lot, and after one particularly rough night, it kind of shoots awake in the middle of Siquin's watch, and so they speak for a little bit. Yusa explains that she has sleeping troubles and is often plagued by terrible nightmares. Siquin suspects that it has a similar connection to the dream that Rob once experienced, but does not pry further as Yusa seems to not understand any further meaning in these dreams. So once the party arrives back at the city, they meet with the guild, who with their success is given full authority and the duty to deal with the witch's hand. The party spends their day preparing by acquiring new magic items, and as they part ways with Yusa and Kira for the time being, as they must return to their own duties, but both express that they would be willing to help the party again should the travels allow it. As the party walks the city, they meet with Dash, who appears to be suffering from lack of sleep herself, and warns the party that in her fortune reading she foretold the party facing danger close to home and very soon. Session end, and start of the next. So, as the party heads back to the inn for a rest, they find the danger that Dash spoke of. At a nearby inn, a murder has taken place, with the prostitute the victim, and a hatred of Orthir as the motive. As we begin a murder mystery! Honestly, this one is kind of like if this was an anime, this would be one of those filler episodes, but one of those cool filler episodes that everybody likes. Anywho, so the party arriving on the scene, take it upon themselves to investigate and solve the murder. As they've gained quite a bit of renown in the city thus far, and are official members of the Adventuring Guild, the guards decide that they would be a great help and give no protest in the matter. So as they just investigate the scene, they discover the names of one Thalion, who likely was involved. Wait, not Thalion, Thylon, who likely was involved, and discover Oliver Mistsplitter was staying at the inn as well, which is a name the party recognized as one of the individuals they met when they actually entered the city for the very first time. At the scene, they discover that the victim was brutally hacked to bits, and that some rather anti-Orthir words are kind of drawn out on the walls in their own blood. As they discover further, the body is actually missing certain pieces, small strips of flesh completely absent from the scene of the crime, as well as in a closet they find robes and symbols belonging to the Church of Vidaia. As they investigate, Kiryun Turum, head of Pippin's guard, comes to investigate the scene himself, as the victim is one of their working folk. The party manages to turn him away, not wanting the anti-Orthir messages at the crime scene to be discovered, alongside the holy symbols of Vidaia clergy found at the scene. Very good call on their part. They convince him to leave, though he is clearly unsatisfied. So the party summon up a familiar and use the scent of the body and the items they find to lead them to the next lead. Which does in fact actually bring them to the Grand Cathedral of the Queen's Quarter. Once there, they discover that the Holy Guard belongs to Gimtek, the head priest himself and leader of the faith of Vidaia. They speak with him and quickly discover he is likely being framed. Speaking with other clergymen, Oliver comes up once again, as the priest says that he healed the hand of a man working for him the very night of the murder. The party travels to Oliver's shop and discover Oliver himself bound and gagged in the basement, locked up in a crate. Discovering that he himself is actually yet another victim in this, it would seem that his identity has been taken and he has been locked away. They save him, and within the basement, they find a tunnel leading to an old crypt dedicated to the Dark Six. The party explores it and clears out the cultists within. They meet with and parley with the leader of the cult, the man known as Thylon. In exchange for their life, he tells the party who put them up to the job and tell them of of a witch named Kruthai within the Frigid Shards, the region of the frontier beyond the Fields of Judgment. The party allows him to leave, at which point he shows his true colors, attacking the party from behind, revealing himself to be an Oni. The party fights him, and Cetiquin is gravely injured, but the party manages to defeat him and save Cetiquin from death. They retrieve a note from him, though this note is too written in the witch's script, and they are unable to identify it at this time. Afterwards, the party clears things up with the church and Pippa's men, and report the findings to the guild before turning in for much needed rest. Session end. Next session begins. So Cetiquin, the next day, is approached by Warforged, who delivers a message from Pinion Civis. She tells her that recent events have forced her to seek results quickly and at whatever cost. As such, she threatens to begin delivering her pieces of her friend should she fail to retrieve the tablets for her. Cetiquin accepts, having no choice, and is given the location of a second temple. Cetiquin tells the party what is happening and her plan to deceive both Pinion and Feist with fake tablets created by Raven the Crow. The party, completely flabbergasted by this, and having both in and out of character forgotten about these secret meetings of Cetiquin, are really taken aback and at a loss for words. Having no choice but to help their friend, the party packs up and heads out for the first temple. Upon the frontier, they have a swift and rather easy travel, save for an encounter with a young Hydra, who they manage to quickly defeat with the use of fire and the recently acquired Wand of Webs. It's actually really creative use of this, so we're actually going to break this down for just a second here. So in the fight, one thing I do to kind of mix up the Hydra fights is I roll for the number of heads, unless it's meant to be like a full-on like tough fight, in which case I give them the standard 5 they start with. In this particular case, it was a younger Hydra, so I had it start with 3 heads, and I do dumb down the XP they get accordingly to the number of heads present. So what they did to make this fight easier for them. So the battlefield was like this large pond surrounded by rocks. The Hydra, being an aquatic creature, is able to get across the pond pretty much no issue, whereas the party would have trouble fighting it in the pond. So they wait on a forward bank, goading it into charging at them, which it does. At which point Rob, with the Wand of Webs he acquired, spins some web across some of the rocks, causing the Hydra to get stuck in it after it failed its strength save. At which point Cetiquin launches a fireball, both damaging the Hydra initially and setting the webs on fire, causing it to take even more fire damage at the start of its turn, as it basically takes damage for each square that the webs are covering, which was most all of them. So with this sort of rather big brain play, they managed to cut down this Hydra very quickly and without much more note to be made of it. So, yeah. So anyways, so after that, they arrive at the temple and find the path blocked by a crystal enchanted with an anti-magic field. An inscription within the chamber states that they must seek the dream. And so, the party goes to sleep, leaving Finadir on guard duty outside. As they awake, they find themselves in an altered form of the temple, as they are now, for the first time, within the realm of dreams itself. So the temple is now not a long tube, but instead a tall tower, with rooms containing traps along its walls. So this was a dungeon I had a lot of fun building. So the whole dungeon itself is built vertically. The only way to proceed is by climbing or flying up the walls. In this case, the party had no means of flight or teleportation, so they climbed the walls. Basically, with the way the handholds were, it was basically all like fingertip strength. If you're not familiar with rock climbing, it is a very useful way to climb, but very difficult if you haven't worked up your grip strength. So essentially, the way I had it work was after the first threshold of climbing, they have to start making athletic checks to climb without falling. With every couple feet, the DC becomes more difficult. However, along the wall where these rooms are, they can climb into these rooms to take a rest. Hey. Anyways, so they climb into the rooms to take a rest. However, climbing into the rooms causes the door to close and lock, trapping them inside. I'm already telling you a story. Don't interrupt, I'm breaking down the dungeon. Anywho, so which is just what they do. So, where was I? So the first chamber they enter contains a statue of a Kinku, an elf, and a dwarf, with on the opposite wall paintings of a cave, a sky, and a forest. The party discovers that to solve this room, what they must do is physically pick up and move the statues and place them in front of the corresponding painting. The Kinku goes in front of the sky, the dwarf goes in front of the cave, and the elf goes in front of the forest. This one they solve without much issue, which is fine because that one is meant to be easy. It's the first one. And so the door opens up and they continue the climb. So second room they enter is a long hallway with the walls, ceilings, and floor painted to look like a sky with little clouds all along it. At the far end of the room, there's a statue of a Kinku kneeling and praying to a robed figure. The party attempts to walk forward with Rob taking the lead. He takes one step onto the painted sky and is teleported out of the room and in the middle of the tower and falls about I think it was 40 feet at that point, I believe, and takes quite a bit of damage. So as he tries to climb back up, Sidiquin and Ragnar try to figure out the puzzle. Ragnar takes a little leap of faith and hops to one of the paintings of the cloud, and is not teleported out of the room. So Ragnar then hop and skips his way across the room from cloud to cloud, making it to a statue. He then kneels at the statue, mimicking the movements of the Kinku statue, and the door opens up. Just as Rob makes his way back into the room. So climbing up to the third room, they discover a large room with a maze with the walls made of fire. Additionally, there were statues of armored knights along the walls that fire at the party as they attempt to traverse the maze. Honestly, not much to this one. The party traverses the maze as you would traverse a maze. Just trying to find the right path. And the room itself had an initiative. And on its initiative, it would take a shot at the party members with the arrows fired by the statues. Now, what the party thought about doing, and was an actual option they could do, is as the walls are made of fire, they can in fact be passed through. So it was actually completely viable that they could actually just run through the walls and straight to the goal of the maze. This would, of course, give them a lot of fire damage doing as they're hopping through magical flames. They decide not to do that and proceed through the maze as normal. So, with that one solved, they reach the final room. So in the final room, once it closes up, in the middle there is a painting of a Kinku once again, sleeping on a cloud with paintings of people burning in agony all around him. As they lay there, as they find themselves locked up in the room begins to heat up. Like, gets hotter and hotter, and flames begin to lick the walls. A voice within them says that to proceed, that they must show that they are at peace within the dream. I forgot to mention, at the start of every one of these puzzles, they could hear a voice in their heads, basically give them a little hint. In this case, it was they must prove that they can be at peace within the dream. So Ragnar and Sidiquin, I believe, was actually the very first one to figure this out. She just kind of opted to immediately be like, okay, be at peace. I'm going to lay down and take a nap. Which is exactly what she did. She just lays down on the floor and chills. And sure enough, even as Rob and Ragnar take a bit of fire damage, she seems completely unfazed. So Ragnar follows suit and does the same, and sure enough, stops being burned. Rob was pretty convinced that that wasn't the puzzle, and so he continued to try to find an alternate way out of the room. As the fire damage continued to burn him up, he decided, screw it, and give it a shot. Hey, Zeus. As he finally rests as well, even as the room itself is engulfed in flames around them, the party takes no damage as they have solved the puzzle. So it opens up and they proceed. So as they finally climb to the top of the tower, at the top they are greeted by a statue of a winged Kinku just floating in the middle. No, I would not start over. You can watch the bot later. So at the top of the tower, there's this winged Kinku statue just floating in the middle of the room, and it appears to be clutching the tablet that they are after. They decide to grab it, and as they do, the statue comes to life with its stone turning to flesh, and they are greeted by the boss of the dungeon. So this boss was a sort of a homebrewed creature of mine. Kind of hacked together bits of the standard Kinku as well as the Awakened from the Eberron book, as well as beefed up with some custom-made legendary actions. So essentially, the way this Kinku worked was he had a magic item that gave him flight, as well as while flying, he could deal extra fire damage. Additionally, he had a bit of some board skills, main one being that he would use Vicious Mockery, and as the effect of the magic item he was using, the Vicious Mockery would deal extra fire damage while he was flying. He would fly above the hole in the middle of the tower the whole time, kind of forcing the party to fight him either at range or try to force him to the edge where they are standing. And then on every turn, he would alternate between one of two legendary actions. One of them being the Psychic Screech that would deal psychic damage as well as stun those who failed their save. And the second being a grappling attack that causes him to sort of lash out these flaming tendrils that, upon hitting you, would deal fire damage and pull you forward and off the tower. They get into this real intense fight with him, like just tough enough to get most of the party down to like single digits or even unconscious. But through a lot of hard work, they managed to beat him, alternating between various types of damage to try to test out what does and does not work. In particular, one of the main types of damage that works is actually just Ragnar's standard weapon attacks and some acid from Citiquin. Rob, unfortunately, did actually spend most of this fight unconscious, as he took the most damage just climbing the tower, and was one of the first ones hit by one of its legendary actions. He did, however, wake up just in time to deliver the finishing blow to it, and to revive Ragnar, who, just before he woke up, was pulled off the tower, falling all the way to the bottom and being knocked unconscious. Mere moments away from death, Rob manages to heal him, and everyone is safe. So, with the foe defeated, they collect the tablet, and discover once again that it is, of course, written in the witch's script. They acquire the wings that the Kinku was using, which were in fact a magical item. And as they begin to wrap up, they hear a voice, discovering that it is in fact the voice of the Witch Queen themselves, who the party has been suspecting to not actually be dead, though it's not so much that she's not dead, but however, they don't really know what's really going on with that yet. So the voice offers to gift them a grace as sort of a reward for completing this temple. Very Legend of Zelda-esque with, weird temple, all these traps, here's a cool reward at the end of it. They agree, and Ragnar requests to gain the ability to read this language that they've been struggling with this entire time. He is gifted with that knowledge, and is marked with the Grace of the Witch, which he opts to hide, not wanting to be killed by the Inquisition, of course. So that is actually where we ended that session, as they have not yet actually read the tablet or the notes they found, as they kind of want to say that the next session, because at this point it was getting pretty late at night. So that catches us up to where we are so far in that campaign. So before I'm able to continue on with this story, I'm going to let some more sessions pass by to kind of have some more content to tell. But yeah, they got into a lot of the cool stuff with this one. They're getting into a lot of the cool dungeons I've built up, and we're all having a real good time with it. So yep, suppose that would do it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed. The next time we do one of these will either be next Monday or the Monday after. No, I haven't done any from the campaign 1 because we haven't really done that much yet, to be frank. You know, it's like, it'd be a pretty short... yeah. Like, maybe after some more sessions build up, I could do that, but for now, I've mostly just been doing... I've done this one, and stories from the Out of the Abyss campaign I played. Do bedtime story. Once upon a time, Jesus went to sleep. The end. Did you like that story? Awesome, it worked. Alright, well, the children have been put to bed, so I guess we better wrap up for the day. Thank everyone for watching. Hope you had fun. Next time I see you should be Tuesday night for some more games. And wish everyone a good day and safe travels.